What's this? A steam tank in a competitive game? Perhaps. Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back, of course, with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. This is another one of the games from my tournament this past weekend. This is Shetland Apache's Empire taking on Bretonnia. I believe this is Wyvern. So let's go ahead and get to the lists. Both lords, this was an option faction, or sorry, both players, rather, this was an option faction for them, so they are using one of the approved lists, lord on the list, rather. For the Empire, that means Arch-Lector, who himself is quite a good support character, I have to say. He's got Grand Hammer of Sigmar, Grand Shield of Faith, and the Benediction for additional leadership, Royal Altar of Griffites, and an Empire Captain as well to provide that the extra melee defense there with the hold the line. We've also got some halberdiers and some state troop spearmen, a couple of mortars, which is an interesting pick. You wouldn't think that mortars would be pretty good, but this is Norden, and Norden is terrible for direct line of sight artillery. However, mortars are able to fire up and over these ridges and up and over the tree lines as well, and actually will do quite well on this map. He's also got a steam tank, of course, Jade Wizard rather, Lord of Life, and that's pretty much it for Wyvern's Bretonians. He's got some questing knights here, defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis, a very heavy air force with 2 units of Royal Hippogriff Knights. His option lord is the Prophetess. He's gone with Lore of Life, of course, on a horse, with Earthblood and Regrowth, no surprises there. She's also got the Assault of Stone item, so we should see that in action as well. Lots of men-at-arms, shields, spears, and some peasant bowmen as well, with the Beastlayers of Bastogne and the Companions of Cornell as well. So without further ado, let's get the battle underway. You can see the steam tank is going to be the primary piece shooting at the enemy cavalry here. It does have decently long range, and you can see it's also come forward a little bit here to be able to clear the tree line and get some open shots potentially. And it does look like it's going to be firing at the Hippogriff Knights, which is of course a good target. The mortars, unfortunately, being left on fire at will, are going to just whiff a few shots, of course. They won't have any prayer of hitting the Royal Hippogriff Knights, but yeah, so far so good. Both players just kind of advancing patiently, and Norden's one of those maps that you really want to try and use the terrain to your advantage, and you can see Wyvern's doing a great job hiding his knights in the woods here so that they don't get shot at by the steam tank, which is pulling back to the safety of the Empire lines. They've formed up in a bit of a defensive geometry. Their dwarven allies would be proud of this geometry, and of course Shetland being a dwarf main makes sense. He'd have some excellent defensive geometry. He's got steam tank still popping off shots here on the Royal Hippogriff Knights. They're just running around here doing some scouting, spotting all the units that are hidden in the woods here. But yeah, the steam tank, so far it hasn't done a ton of damage. Just chipped off a little bit off one of these units, but nothing major so far. The mortars have started to make contact with the spearmen at arms, which is going to be pretty decent overall. The mortars don't do the best AP, but they're pretty decent against low armor troops. Shooting at all these men at arms, of course, going to be very cost efficient. And it looks like a couple of those shots actually hitting the trees. One of them actually might have just connected with the Royal Hippogriff Knights as they flew directly overhead there. Not sure, I didn't quite catch that, but it does look like they are going to be targeting on these men at arms here. And yeah, Wyvern just advancing very patiently up the hill, making sure to get everything into place before he comes into a big pitched melee engagement. But it's going to be tough. There's no Grail Relic to give the peasants here immune to psychology in the front line, and you can see they're taking a pretty sound shellacking from those mortars as they advance up the hill here. It's pretty typical, you know, peasants getting blasted by Empire troops. I feel like that's kind of just the way it goes sometimes in this matchup, but yeah, the mortars getting some really good fire here. Just brutal stuff, and if mortars can make contact, they can do some pretty good damage. The issue is actually making contact. And you can see the Hippogriff Knights just chilling back here, taking cannon shots to the face. Again, no models have been finished off here, so they will be able to heal. They will be able to be healed. Wow, that's a mouthful. By the prophetess there. But yeah, now the mortars going after the peasant archers in the back line, which is a great target. The peasant archers, of course, going to be dealing with at a range, and you possibly don't want friendly fire in the front line, so it's good to target enemy ranged units with the mortar. You can see it's brutally effective, just wrecking through the peasants. You can see the armor that the beast slayers have makes a huge difference there, as they're able to get up from that explosion, whereas the peasants are just getting blasted. Meanwhile, the frontline engagement is getting underway. You can see the Royal Altar Griffites charging in, but this is the fight that everyone wants to see here. The Royal Altar Griffites fighting against Royal Hippogriff Knights, and it's going to be a very brutal pitched engagement here. Looks like a regrowth being dropped here, sorry, upgraded Earthblood. The Archlector, unfortunately, not in a position to drop his support buffs immediately, and it does look like the Prophetess is going to be dropping the Assault of Stone here, which is going to come in and do a massive amount of damage, especially even to the Demigryph Knights. You can see them down to only 16 unit models. The Steam Tank, though, still holding steady, as the Royal Hippogriff Knights haven't really been focusing on it that much, and it's forcing a nice blob here for the mortar to fire in and just be brutally effective. So some nice play from Shetland, actually using the Steam Tank as a bit of a distraction, Carnifex, so to speak. And oh man, that shot landed directly on the heads of some peasants there. The mortars getting some really good work done at the moment. Now the Archlector comes in to drop some buffs, and suddenly the Steam Tank has 56 melee attacks. Still horrible weapon strength, but the Royal Altar Griffites have managed to stabilize in terms of their leadership. They've got 11 unit models. They are getting some major healing here with another upgraded regrowth. Both sides just dumping Lore of Life into this engagement, as the Royal Hippogriff Knights are just sitting in sustained combat. There are a lot of halberds and spears for the Empire here, so this probably isn't the most efficient engagement for Bretonnia, you know, they're definitely going hard trying to finish off some high-value units here, and the Steam Tank is also in the center pocket, but probably stayed a little bit over long there. I find with the Royal Hippogriff Knights, they do the most damage when charging down from the air, so you want to try and cycle them up and out as much as possible, and the Terror has been a big issue, you can see, for the other units here. The Companions of Cornell came in and weren't really too effective there. They kind of just got dragged down by halberds. I mean, they did get 56 kills, but yeah, you can see the Hippogriff Knights coming in the back line, and they aren't able to shut down the mortars here. The what are these guys? Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis? That's it. They're also cycle charging in and out here, doing some okay work, but there's just a lot of anti-large state troops here with the halberds and the spearmen, and you know, there's only so much that the Bretonnian Knights can do. And the Royal Hippogriff Knights are getting pretty close to their healing cap at this point. At least one of their units is. The other unit, unfortunately, has dropped a unit model, so won't be able to be healed, you know, up to the full 5 unit models. Although, if they take damage, they still will be able to get to their healing cap. But anyway, you can see the Archlector kind of getting run over by the Bretonnian Knights a little bit as they rear charge here. But he's going to go ahead and stand strong. And yeah, you can see the Beast Slayers trying to get back in here. Bretonnian forces trying to make a rally, but at this point it's just going to be rough. You can see the Prophetess is going to be chasing off some mortar crew there, but the halberds and the state troop spearmen just being very cost effective here, and the Steam Tank has been a menace for the frontline Bretonnians. The peasants just have had a really hard time holding up their leadership to the terror of the Steam Tank, especially because it can push through and apply a rear charge penalty. So yeah, still don't think that the Steam Tank is necessarily super competitive. I mean, both of these players, I would say, were playing with lists that weren't necessarily the most competitive thing in the world. Although Shetland's list did surprise me, I have to say. It did better than I was expecting, particularly the 2 mortars. When I saw that pick, when I first watched this replay, I was like, oh man, this is going to be interesting. But he made it work, and you know, especially on this map, it makes sense. You know, you have all these ridges and you have the trees where cannons and stuff really struggle to be effective, but the mortar can fire up and over those obstructions. So it may be worth looking at on other maps as well, if you are going to be facing some low armor stuff. And you know, Bretonnian infantry is low armor, of course, so maybe worth looking at in other matchups as well, and on other maps where direct line of fire artillery maybe isn't as good. Potentially the mortar may be a good option, but Shetland definitely did a good job here and kind of forcing his opponent into his kill zone, so to speak. But yeah, you can see him starting to mop up the last bits here. Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis trying to charge the Steam Tank, but again, the terror is going to be a big issue here, and they are routed off. A few peasants left. Actually, these are the Beast Slayers of Bastogne, still fighting against this huge mob of state troops here. and the Hippogriff Knights do come down for one more charge against the steam tank. If they had been able to catch the steam tank out earlier on in the battle, you can see they do get some nice damage against it. So if they had been able to do that a little bit earlier on, rather than fighting in that big blob with all these anti-large infantry for the Empire, would have definitely been a better engagement. I do think that they overstayed their welcome in that front line a little bit too long, and that's ultimately what cost Bretonnia here. But still, very fun game. Some units you don't get to see too often, and some generic lords you don't get to see too often as well, although if you watch my channel, you'll get to see the Archlector quite a bit. And the Prophetess Tus, come to think of it. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, or right, I'm not really sure. But anyway, Bretonnians making their last stand. The Hippogriff Knights come down one more time to try and finish off the steam tank here, but it's just not quite going to be enough at the end of the day. The steam tank's actually able to get 128 kills, 2 chevrons, not too bad, all things considered, at the end of the day. Yeah, the Royal Griffites definitely took a pounding, but they were able to just stand on the infantry support and hang around long enough that they were able to get some good work done. So, fun stuff, well played to both players. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. I'm going to be casting quite a few more from the tournament because I got a lot of really good games from people going after the Hero of the People prize, which, by the way, for those of you guys wondering, Arkan the Black did win that award. He got, I think it was, what, 5 out of 6 wins, primarily using Khalida and Isabella, which were both on the list, and both pretty good meme lords. They're semi-competitive, they're not terrible, but they're not great either. So it definitely made for some fun battles, and yeah, I'll be showing a few of those to you guys. Crabling as well got 4 wins with Grimgore, which in and of itself is quite impressive, so I'm going to be casting some of those, and I'm also giving a small consolation prize to Crabling also. Just because 4 wins with Grimgore that takes some dedication. So yeah, he definitely deserves a bone for that one. So this battle though, super fun. Thanks to Shetland for sending that one in. Great use of the mortars there and the steam tank as well, just to saturate that front line, perpetually apply that terror, and kind of trapped in the Royal Hippogriff Knights as well. And you can see the Royal Griffites only ended up getting 10 kills, but again, they were able to hang around long enough in that frontline engagement that they got some good work done. Speaking of good work, the Royal Hippogriff Knights at the end of the day did end up getting some XP chevrons. Wyvern did what he should, which is dump all of his healing into the Royal Hippogriff Knights. I just think he should have pulled out a little bit sooner from that frontline engagement and tried to use their air mobility to a little bit better effect rather than just standing on top of the halberds. But still, you know, tough situation to be forced into with the mortars blowing up the peasants and so on. So fun stuff. Hope you guys enjoyed watching that one. I know I sure did. Yeah, if you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe. Go ahead and check the social media links down in the description below, and I will see you next time.